Welcome back, Wayfarer. I'm so glad you could join us tonight. It's wonderful to have you on our journey, and I hope you find a deep and restful sleep when we reach our destination. You have found your way to another quiet sanctuary, and you are very welcome here. Before we step out into the evening, take a moment to settle. Let the weight of your body sink into the mattress. Feel the support of the bed beneath you, a solid foundation holding you steady. Take a deep, slow breath in, filling your lungs with the coolness of the night. And as you exhale, let the tension in your jaw, your neck, and your hands dissipate and flow from your body. You are safe. You are grounded. You are home. Tonight, we leave the open road for the sheltered warmth of the pottery workshop. We have followed the river Stour to a place where the red clay of the valley is not just the ground beneath our boots, but the very lifeblood of the local craft. As you push open the heavy salt-pocked timber door of the workshop, the transition is immediate and profound. The cool, damp air of the riverside is replaced by a heavy, still atmosphere that smells intensely of mineral earth, cold water, and the faint, sweet tang of wood smoke lingering from the distant kilns. This is a brown sanctuary, a world of shadows and soft ambient light, where the noise of the outside world is muffled by thick stone walls. The floor beneath you is a tapestry of dried, dusty footprints, a map of a day's labour frozen in pale terracotta dust. In the centre of the room stands a massive, scarred wooden bench, its surface stained a deep, permanent ochre by decades of contact with the clay. Here, the first task of the potter begins, the wedging. You watch as a large, heavy block of raw clay is lifted onto the bench. This is the red horse, earth, of the Vale, a dense, ferriferous clay, blended with silt from Blockley and Ironbridge, to give it the strength to withstand the bite of a frost. The potter begins to knead the clay, a rhythmic, physical dialogue known as the ram's head technique. The sound is a deep, percussive thud shush as the clay is pressed down and rolled back, over and over again. You can see the muscle of the potter's forearms working against the stubborn density of the earth, forcing out the tiny invisible pockets of air that would otherwise shatter a pot in the heat of the fire. Reach out and touch a discarded shard of the raw clay sitting on the edge of the bench. It is cold, colder than the air in the room, and surprisingly heavy. Between your thumb and forefinger, it feels smooth, but grittier than you expected. A texture that speaks of ancient silt and crushed stone. As the potter continues the rhythm, the smell of the wet clay intensifies. It is a primal, honest aroma. It is the smell of a riverbed after a summer storm. A scent that is both clean and ancient. The thud, shush, of the wedging becomes a metronome for the room. A slow-motion heartbeat that prepares the earth for the wheel. The clay is no longer just mud. It is being awakened, transformed into a unified plastic mass that is ready to be shaped by the hand and the spin of the wheel. You find yourself matching your breathing to the potter's movements. Your chest rising and falling with the steady, focused energy of the preparation. The potter carries the prepared ball of clay, now a smooth rounded dome, to the wheel. This is a traditional kick wheel, a heavy wooden machine that relies on the momentum of a large stone flywheel at its base. As the potter's foot begins to catch the edge of the wheel, a new sound enters the workshop. A low-frequency rhythmic whir-hum. It isn't the mechanical whine of a motor, but a deep, organic vibration that resonates through the floorboards and into the very soles of your boots. The wheel begins to spin, a blur of dark wood and silvered metal, gathering speed until the hum reaches a steady, hypnotic pitch. The potter dips their hands into a wooden bowl of slip, clay, saturated water, and the sound of the wet palms meeting the spinning clay is a soft, liquid hiss. This is the moment of centering, where the chaotic energy of the earth is brought into a perfect, silent alignment at the very heart of the spin. You watch, mesmerized, as the wobbling mass of red clay suddenly becomes still. A perfect spinning pillar of earth that seems to defy the very gravity that formed it. with the clay centered and spinning in a perfect silent blur. The potter's hands remain momentarily still, cupped around the red pillar, as if to calm it. The only sound in the workshop is the deep, resonant whir-hum of the heavy stone flywheel below, a vibration that seems to pulse upward through the wooden frame of the wheel. The potter's thumbs now move to the very center of the spinning mass. As they press downward, a new sound emerges. A wet, suctioning slap as the solid dome is hollowed out. You watch as the potter's hands dive deep into the heart of the clay, opening the floor of the pot. The red earth, slick with grey-gold slip, curls away from their thumbs in a smooth liquid wave. The scent of the iron clay becomes even more concentrated now, a cool metallic vapour rising from the friction of skin against earth. It is a sharp, clean smell, like the air inside a stone cellar, mingling with the warmth of the potter's breath in the quiet room. Now begins the most delicate part of the dance, the pull. The potter hooks their fingers, one hand inside the hollowed chamber and the other braced against the exterior wall. With a slow, deliberate upward motion, they begin to draw the clay toward the ceiling. You can see the tension in their knuckles as they squeeze the spinning wall between their fingertips. The sound is a constant rhythmic hiss, swish. The sound of water-saturated clay resisting and then yielding to the pressure. The short, squat mound begins to grow, rising up from the wheelhead like a living thing. As it gains height, the wall of the pot becomes thinner and the red horse clay begins to show its true character. Under the soft workshop light, the wet surface catches the reflection of the window, a shimmering mirrored ribbon that dances around the circumference of the pot. The hiss of the hands against the clay is hypnotic, a white noise lullaby that masks the distant drip, drip of the eaves outside. Each time the potter reaches the top of the pull, they pause to collar the rim, compressing the spinning edge with a piece of damp leather. The sound is a soft, leathery squeal, a tiny, high-pitched note that signals the strengthening of the pot's lip. Between pulls, the potter dips a natural sea sponge into the bowl of slip and squeezed it over the pot. You hear the plink, plop of the excess water hitting the splash pan, followed by the slosh of the slurry as it builds up at the base. This slurry, a mixture of clay and water, has a texture like heavy cream, and as it spins, it creates a centrifugal whirl that paints the inside of the splash pan in a chaotic terracotta sunburst. The air in the workshop feels thicker now, saturated with the humidity of the wet clay and the steady, rhythmic effort of the artisan. Every movement is a study in patience. There is no rushing the earth. If the potter moves too fast, the centrifugal force will tear the pot apart. If they move too slow, the clay will become tired and collapse. By the third pull, the pot has reached its full height, a tall, elegant cylinder that will eventually become a classic Whichford flower pot. The potter now uses a wooden rib, a flat tool carved from boxwood, to smooth the exterior. As the wood meets the spinning clay, the sound shifts from the soft hiss of skin to a firmer, more resonant scrape. You can see the tiny grains of sand and ironstone in the clay being pressed down, leaving behind a surface that is as smooth as polished bone. The rib creates a sharp architectural definition, a series of subtle horizontal lines that mark the passage of the tool. Reach out your hand in the darkness and imagine the feeling of that spinning wall, vibrating, wet and incredibly fragile, yet held in a perfect geometric balance by the invisible force of the spin. The workshop has become a sanctuary of circular motion where the whir of the stone, the hiss of the clay, and the scrape of the wood combine into a single, seamless symphony of creation. You are grounded here, anchored by the weight of the red earth and the steady, ancient pulse of the wheel. The tall, wet cylinder now stands at its full height, vibrating with a delicate liquid energy. To transform this simple column into the iconic flared shape of a witchwood planter, the potter reaches for a rib, a small semicircular tool carved from dense, aged boxwood. As the potter presses the rib against the interior of the spinning wall, while bracing the exterior with a sponge, the sound in the workshop changes once more. The soft, wet hiss of skin is replaced by a firm, resonant skrr as the wood plows through the slurry. You watch as the straight walls begin to bow outward, expanding under the steady pressure of the wood. It is a slow, breathtaking expansion, like a flower blooming in time-lapse sequence. The clay is being stretched to its absolute limit. The iron-rich particles within it aligning to support the new voluminous shape. The scent of the clay seems to freshen with this expansion, releasing a hidden coolness from deep within the earth's structure. A mineral breath that hangs in the still air of the workshop. With the body of the pot shaped, the potter's attention shifts to the lip. This is the architectural crown of the piece, the part that must provide strength for a lifetime of use. The potter takes a long, thin strip of damp leather, a chamois, and drapes it over the top edge. As the wheel spins, they fold the leather over the rim, squeezing it firmly. The sound is a high-pitched melodic one, a clean, friction-filled note that signals the compression of the clay. The rim thickens, becoming a sturdy, rounded bead that frames the mouth of the pot. You can see the water being forced out of the clay, leaving the rim looking darker and more substantial than the walls below. This isn't just an aesthetic choice. It is a structural necessity, creating a reinforced ring that prevents the pot from warping or cracking as it dries. The rhythmic zip, zip, zip of the leather provides a sharp, percussive counterpoint to the low, heavy thrum of the flywheel. Now comes the moment that defines this regional heritage. The decorative pie crust edging. The potter slows the wheel down until it is barely crawling. A rhythmic creak from the wooden axle marking each rotation. They dip their thumb into the slip and begin to press into the thickened rim at regular intervals. Press, turn, press, turn. The sound is a series of wet, rhythmic tucks, like the sound of a boot pulling out of thick valley mud. With each press, the red clay displaces, curling upward into a soft, scalloped wave. This is a tactile tradition passed down through generations of valley potters, a way of signing the work with the mark of the hand. As you watch, the rim takes on a rustic, artisanal energy, a series of shadows and highlights that catch the flickering light of the workshop's single lamp. The pot is no longer a generic vessel. It has become a piece of the Vale, bearing the thumbprints of the marker in its very bones. As the decoration is completed, the potter slowly removes their foot from the kick pedal. The wheel doesn't stop immediately. The massive stone flywheel below carries the momentum, the whir, gradually descending in pitch, moving from a hum to a drone, and finally to a series of long, quiet sighs. The silence that returns to the workshop is heavy and expectant. The finished pot sits on the wheelhead, a gleaming, wet masterpiece of red iron earth. It looks fragile, almost liquid, as if it might slump back into a mound if the potter were to look away. Reach out your hand in the darkness of your room and imagine the cooling air hitting that wet surface. The pot is beginning its long journey toward the fire, but for now, it simply exists in the stillness. A perfect union of the red horse clay, the ancient momentum of the stone, and the patient, rhythmic intent of the hand. You feel a deep sense of completion, your own pulse slowing to match the dying rotation of the wheel. Anchored in the quiet, dusty heart of the pottery. The pot now sits motionless on the wheelhead, a towering, symmetrical monument of wet, red horse earth. It is finished in form, but it is still physically bonded to the dark wood of the wheel by a thick, slurry-slicked base. The potter reaches for a cheese wire, two small wooden toggles connected by a length of braided stainless steel. This tool is a simple, brutal necessity. As the wheel is given one final slow-motion nudge with the foot, the potter holds the wire taut against the surface of the wheel and draws it steadily through the base of the pot. The sound is singular and gritty, the sound of metal slicing through thousands of microscopic particles of silica and ironstone. It is a clean, decisive severance. You can almost feel the release of tension as the pot is freed from its spinning anchor, the vacuum beneath the clay breaking with a soft, wet thump. Now comes the most precarious moment in the workshop, the lift. A large pot of this size, saturated with water and slip, is incredibly heavy and possesses the structural integrity of thick cream. The potter coats their hands in dry, powdered clay to provide a release, and reaches down to cradle the base. You watch as they lift the vessel, their muscles tensing under the weight of the Vale's earth. The sound is the sharp, indrawn breath of the Artisan and the faint creak of the wooden floorboards as they take the added load. The pot is moved from the wheel to a bat, a circular wooden board. The air in the room seems to ripple. For a heartbeat, The wet walls of the pot quiver, a liquid vibration that travels from the base to the scalloped pie crust rim. It is a reminder that this object is still half liquid, a temporary shape held together only by the potter's skill and the surface tension of the water. The potter carries the bat into the drying room, a smaller, narrower chamber adjacent to the main workshop. As you follow, the atmosphere undergoes a startling transformation. The cool, damp, mineral-heavy air of the wheel room is replaced by a soft, enveloping warmth. There is no fire here yet, but the room is lined with racks of drying ware that radiate a gentle residual heat. The scent here is different. It is the smell of the clay breathing out. It's a dusty, parched aroma, like the smell of a sun-baked country road after a brief summer shower. It is a sweet, chalky scent that catches in the back of your throat. The smell of water departing the earth. You can hear the ticking of the wooden shelves as they expand in the warmth. A slow, rhythmic chorus of wood and clay settling into the silence. The pot is placed on a middle shelf, surrounded by its silent companions. Over the next few days, the air will pull the moisture from the clay, and the pot will undergo the transition to leather hard. Reach out in your mind and feel the surface of a pot that has been here for a day. It is no longer slick or liquid. It feels cold, firm, and slightly waxy, much like a block of hard cheddar or a piece of dressed stone. The vibrant, bruised crimson of the wet iron clay is beginning to fade, turning into a pale, matte ochre. This is the stage where the clay is at its most versatile, strong enough to be handled, yet soft enough to be carved or fettled. The room is a sanctuary of patience, a place where the frantic energy of the spinning wheel is traded for the slow, invisible work of evaporation. You stand in the doorway, watching the soft light catch the drying rims, feeling the warmth of the room seep into your bones. The rhythm of the work has slowed to a crawl, matching the steady, imperceptible drying of the earth. You are content to wait here, suspended in the quiet warmth, as the red horse clay prepares itself for the transformative power of the kiln. A few days have passed in the quiet, warm respiration of the drying room, and the potter now returns to collect the vessel. The transformation is striking. The pot is no longer a shimmering, liquid-like occupant of the wheel. It has reached the leather-hard stage. As the potter lifts it back onto the central workbench, the sound is no longer a wet thump, but a solid, resonant clunk against the wood. The clay has tightened, its molecules huddling closer together as the water departed, causing the entire form to shrink slightly. Reach out and run your hand along the exterior wall. It feels cool, not the icy chill of wet mud, but a steady, stony coolness. The texture is reminiscent of a fine-grained suede or a piece of heavy, damp leather. It is firm to the touch, unyielding, yet if you were to press your fingernail into it, it would still leave a clean, dark crescent. The scent has shifted as well, losing its sharp metallic edge and becoming a soft, powdery aroma of parched earth and ancient dust. The potter now performs the fettling, the final meticulous tidying of the pot before it is committed to the fire. They invert the pot on the bench, and using a small, sharp steel tool, they begin to shave away the excess clay from the base, where the cutting wire left its gritty mark. The sound is a rhythmic scritch, a crisp and satisfying noise that echoes in the high rafters of the workshop. Tiny curled ribbons of clay fall away from the tool, spiraling onto the bench like wood shavings. These trimmings are dry and brittle, making a soft rustle as they pile up. The potter is carving a foot ring, a shallow, recessed circle that will allow the pot to sit level on a garden terrace, ensuring that water can drain freely from beneath. It is a moment of quiet, focused precision, where the rough-hewn character of the valley mud is given its final professional polish. With the fettling complete, the pot is ready for the big fire. We move from the intimate world of the workbench to the back of the pottery, where the great wood-fired kiln stands like a brick fortress. This structure is a masterpiece of vernacular engineering, built from thousands of fire bricks and reinforced with heavy iron bands. The air here is different. It is dry, smelling of old ash and the faint, resinous scent of seasoned pine and oak stacked in the woodshed. The potter begins the loading, a slow and methodical puzzle where hundreds of pots are stacked inside the dark chamber. Each piece must be placed with care, separated by kiln furniture, small clay pillars and bats, to ensure that the heat can circulate around every curve. The sound of the loading is a series of musical clinks and taps as the ceramic-like clay meets the hard fire brick, a percussive melody that marks the transition from the world of hands to the world of fire. The kiln door is finally bricked up, leaving only small spy holes for the potter to monitor the progress. The first fire is small, a candle fire, meant to gently drive out the last microscopic traces of moisture. The potter strikes a match and the sound is a sharp scritch flare, followed by the soft crackle of dry kindling catching light in the firebox. A thin blue ribbon of smoke begins to rise from the chimney, smelling of sweet sap and scorched wood. This initial heat is a slow persuasion. If the fire rises too quickly, the steam trapped in the clay will shatter the pots. You stand in the gathering twilight of the yard, watching the flicker of the orange flame against the dark bricks. The rhythm of the day, the spinning, the pulling, and the carving, has culminated in this steady rising heat. The red horse clay is about to undergo its final metamorphosis, a trial by fire that will turn the soft mud of the Vale into a stone-hard vessel that will outlast its maker. You feel the first warmth of the kiln radiating toward you, a gentle, comforting heat that anchors you to the earth, even as the sparks begin to dance toward the stars. As the night deepens over the Vale, the candle fire has grown into a powerful rhythmic beast. The kiln is no longer a silent brick monument. It has become a living thing, breathing heat and light into the dark yard. The potter is now stoking at the peak of the firing, a process of intense physical labor and precise timing. Every few minutes, the heavy iron fire doors are swung open with a metallic clash creak, and the sudden blast of light is blinding. A brilliant shimmering white-orange that illuminates the dusty rafters and the weary face of the artisan. The potter tosses in long, split lengths of seasoned pine and oak. The sound is a crack hiss as the wood meets the inferno, followed by a deep, guttural whoosh of air as the chimney draws the flames upward through the packed stacks of pottery. The air in the yard hums with a low-frequency vibration, a steady thrum that you can feel in the marrow of your bones. Inside the kiln, the red horse clay is undergoing a profound chemical transformation. At 1100 degrees, the earth is no longer just drying, it is vitrifying. The microscopic particles of silica and iron are beginning to melt and fuse together, turning the porous mud into a dense, glass-like stone. And this is the moment where the valley's geology is recreated in a few hours of intense heat. You can peer through a tiny spy hole in the brickwork, a circular window into a world of pure energy. Inside, the pots are no longer red or brown. They are glowing with a translucent, ghostly radiance, appearing almost liquid in the shimmering heat haze. The scent of the firing is a complex, heavy atmosphere of wood ash, scorched minerals, and the ozone-like tang of extreme temperature. It is a dry, searing smell that seems to bake the very air you breathe, a scent of creation and transformation. There is a profound hypnotic rhythm to the firing. Open, stoke, close. Wait. Listen. The potter listens to the voice of the kiln. They aren't looking for a clock. They are watching the pyrometric cones, small triangles of ceramic placed inside the chamber that bend at specific temperatures. The sound of the fire is a constant rushing roar, like a distant waterfall or the sound of a gale-force wind through a pine forest. Every time the fire door opens, the snap and pop of the fresh wood provides a sharp, percussive accent to the drone. Reach out your hand toward the kiln, keeping a safe distance. The heat is a solid, invisible wall, a comforting and formidable presence that pushes back the cold night air. The vibrations of the fire are grounding, a reminder of the raw power required to turn the soft, malleable clay into something that can withstand 100 winters of frost and rain. The kiln has reached its destination. The final cones have bent, signaling that the terracotta has achieved its maximum strength. The potter now enters the soak, maintaining the heat at its highest point to ensure it has penetrated the very center of the thickest pots. The stoking slows, the rhythm becoming more measured and deliberate. The whoosh of the chimney softens into a steady, confident purr. In this peak moment, the workshop and the yard are suspended in a golden, incandescent peace. The labor of the wheel, the wet slip, the wooden rib, and the thumb-pressed rim has all been surrendered to this white-hot chamber. You stand in the shadows. Your eyes are adjusting to the darkness after the brilliance of the fire door, feeling the immense energy of the kiln beginning to settle. The work is done. The clay has been claimed by the fire, and all that remains is the long, slow descent back to the silence of the earth. The roar of the grand fire has finally subsided, leaving behind a silence that feels heavy and profound. The potter has ceased the stoking, and the last of the embers in the firebox have faded from a brilliant orange to a deep, smouldering crimson. Now begins the most patient stage of the entire craft, the cooling. For 2 days, the kiln must remain sealed, allowing the temperature to drop as slowly and as steadily as it rose. If the doors were opened too soon, the sudden rush of cool valley air would cause the stone-hard clay to shiver and crack. As you stand in the darkened yard, you can hear the kiln speaking in the quiet of the night. It is a delicate musical language of pings and clinks, the sound of the fire bricks and the terracotta contracting in the cooling air. It is a rhythmic, crystalline percussion that marks the slow return of the earth to its resting state. When the time is right, the potter returns to the kiln door. The sound of the unbricking is a steady, satisfying thud scrape as the temporary wall is dismantled stone by stone. As the interior is revealed, a soft, dry heat still radiates from the chamber, smelling of scorched earth and clean wood-fired stone. The pots are no longer the bruised crimson of the raw clay, or the ghostly white of the furnace. They have emerged as a vibrant, toasted terracotta, a warm, earthy orange that seems to hold the memory of the fire within its walls. The potter reaches in and lifts the first vessel, the Whichford planter we watched on the wheel. The sound is a clear bell-like ring as it is placed on the stone floor. A sound of absolute density and strength. Reach out in your mind and feel the finished surface. It is no longer soft or waxy. It is rough, honest, and as permanent as the lyre stone of the valley. The workshop is settling into its final rest. The wheel is still. The wooden ribs are washed and drying on their hooks, and the terracotta dust has settled into a fine, silver-grey veil over the benches. The scent of the room has become one of accomplishment. The smell of baked clay and the faint, sweet aroma of cold ash. As you prepare to leave this sanctuary, take one final, slow breath of this still, mineral air. The journey of the red horse earth is complete. It has been awakened by the water, shaped by the spinning wheel, refined by the hand, and tempered by the fire. It is now a vessel, ready to hold the life of a garden, a sturdy companion for the seasons to come. You feel the weight of this completion in your own limbs, a deep, resonant tiredness that pulls you toward the stillness of your own rest. The world beyond the workshop door is draped in a soft, velvet indigo. The river Stour continues its rhythmic, liquid murmur in the distance, a constant hush gurgle that matches the slow rise and fall of your breathing. The images of the day, the spinning clay, the rising walls, and the glowing heart of the kiln are beginning to blur at the edges, dissolving into a soft, warm haze. You are drifting now, moving away from the labor of the hands and into the quiet landscape of sleep. There is no more to be done, no more earth to shape, no more fires to tend. The rhythm of the potter's wheel has become your own internal pulse, a slow, steady rotation that carries you deeper and deeper into the quiet. You are safe. You are grounded. You are home. Let the warmth of the kiln linger in your bones as you sink into the perfect, dreamless peace of the valley night. Good night, Wayfarer. Sleep well. Sleep deep. The earth is still, and you are at rest.